I'm Steve Hassan, and I'm with Lisa Williams. And Lisa, is it okay if I record now that I'm recording?
Yes, sir, it is.
Just want to make sure that
Make it
we're
legit.
kosher and all of that. First question is, are you familiar at all with my work on my website, my books, or anything like that?
Yes, your books for sure. Now you wrote the book, The Cult of Trump.
I did.
Yeah, I saw that at Politics and Prose and had that in my hot little hands about a week ago. So yes, that and definitely, definitely been on the website. I'm always looking for things that can validate any of the experience I've been through, looking for points to see if, I'm right on with my experiences, whether it was a cult. And I know you are the absolute like gold standard for knowing what that is. So.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
I was in a cult, which is how I got interested.
Yes. I read your bio. Absolutely, you were. Yeah. What years was that? How long ago?
The Moon Cult in
Yes.
the 70s, and had a radical personality change and dropped out of college, quit my job, and came to believe my parents and my family were satanic, even though I'm Jewish and we didn't believe in Satan. I was taken to see the Exorcist movie and told that God made the Exorcist, and what happened to that girl would happen to us if we ever left the church.
Yes.
And then I nearly died in a van crash due to sleep exhaustion. And that's when my family hired ex-members to do a deprogramming intervention. And then I woke up, and then I was like, how did this happen to me?
Wow. It's a subtle, seductive brainwashing. We know that,
Well, everybody has different experiences, and things also change over time, and groups can be different from one location to another. But I really would like to learn from you about your experience. Could you tell me, were you raised in it, or were you brought into it, and when did you leave it? And then we can get into some specific concerning behaviors.
So I remember it like a huge shift. I was 9 years old. We were raised Catholic, me and my brother. My mother came out of Christian Science. My father came out of Catholicism. My mother also had her father was Christian Science. Her mother was Lutheran. So there's a lot of static there. They had a big family split about religion. So it was kind of set up icky from the beginning. And then my parents raised us Catholic. My mother reluctantly, her parents, hated my dad, didn't want her to get married, didn't want to come to the wedding, the whole rocky road. So at some point when I was about 9 years old, I was in 4th grade, my mother announced to me, we're not going to be doing Halloween anymore. And I'm like, what?
How traumatizing for a young child.
Totally. Because it must have been before Halloween, because I remember having a bulletin board up on my room and I was going to be a ghost with chains. I don't know. So anyways, and that year, my parents brought us down into the basement and hid us in the basement. And my dad put like a pillow in the window so none of the light would show. My mom brought a guitar down there, to sing Kumbaya or whatever was the thing of, this was about 1976. And they told us, my brother was younger, he doesn't remember a lot of it, but I remember my parents saying that they had joined a evangelical movement that had shot out of the Catholic Church. So it was slow, like we stopped going to Catholic Mass. And then we started going into the kind of lower level of the church and doing more of a guitar mass, more casual, more hippie, that kind of thing. Then it sort of started breaking off to the little church groups in the houses. I remember my dad was not on board in the beginning, and that was a huge thing with them. And I remember
more your mother who was into it than your dad?
Yeah, my mom got swayed by a friend of hers who she would meet with. And I know my mom used to say to me, we need to just pray dad in, this kind of thing. Eventually he did. I don't know how reluctantly or not, but all of a sudden we were going to, or my mom was having Bible studies first. And I remember, I remember thinking, when my mother makes pound cake, Satan is coming to visit. seriously, because she would make pound cake on Wednesday night. I believe it was Wednesdays, because she'd have all these people over. So she's making the cake, she's doing the coffee, and I know it's going to be scary because she started doing the delivery of demons in the house.
Okay.
Yeah. So I remember her saying to me and my brother, stay upstairs. It's the only time we got to be in their bedroom because they had a TV in there and the one and only air conditioner. We had TV dinners. Stay in there. My dad, I think, took off with his friend and went and had a beer because my dad was not in it right away. So I remember hearing horrible screaming and looking over the railing and seeing a woman laying down on the floor, writhing and screaming, and everyone praying over her. And I was just terrified, and running back to the room. And, I just dreaded Wednesday nights because my mother, for some odd reason, decided that was a good idea. And her friends were capable of delivering demons probably 3 weeks into her finding Jesus.
Wow.
So then my dad,
even though you were raised Catholic and believed you were a Christian, now
Right.
she thought that she had found Jesus.
Yep.
Mhm.
Born again, told us, well, me and my brother, but he was too young. He's 3 years behind me, but told me that if I didn't say the prayer, Jesus come into my life, that I was going to burn in hell.
Mhm.
My friend, then it went into my dad started going to the meetings, and then all of a sudden we were going to these other households, and they called them households, and they were meetings, and it was called, my mom just called it community. We're going to go to community meetings. At the time, it was called Servants of the Lord.
Mhm.
Then for some odd reason, they changed it to Servants of the Light. Then they changed it to People of Praise. But we were already out of it by the POP time. But anyways, I was aged out, but it just got weirder from there. So it was like, then I remember my dad saying, I'm going to take you to a meeting. And they must have decided to take me solo because I was older and freaking out probably. And my dad took me to a meeting at Regina High School auditorium.
Mhm.
A Catholic school, which I would end up going to for a year until that was satanic and I was pulled out. And I remember him saying, now people are going to pray in a different language. Don't freak out, but it was explained to me somewhere down the line that we do not know how to pray for ourselves because we do not know what we need.
Mhm.
God is all knowing. He knows past, present, future.
Mhm.
How many hairs on your head before you were born? We are all born sinners. So if we start making babbling baby noises,
Mhm.
one of the fruit, that what my mom would make me practice, she'd say, if you just start with baby noises, it will come. And I remember her saying, it's God's perfect prayer. And then we were channeling God. And then he is praying for what we need that we don't know. So that to this day is just creepy. But anyways, so
Did you do that?
no, well, I
Did
remember
you
having
speak
to
in
go to
tongues?
Bible. No, I never bought into it. I was the rebel girl.
Mhm.
I remember going to camp, Bible camp. I think it was called Lake Geneva Chapel or something. And that's where, like, I don't think they were affiliated, but you could rent it. Like churches could rent that. They had a little
Yeah.
chapel.
Yeah.
And my mom went as a counselor one year, and she encouraged me to do the altar call. And so I did go up there because I felt I had to. And I remember fake crying.
How old were you at that point?
By then I was probably like 14 because I
Mhm.
just found a picture yesterday for the journalist of me at Bible camp and sent it to him. And I looked to be about 7th or 8th grade, according to my bad hairstyle. The Dorothy Hamill cut. So anyways, I remember doing that. And then they were trying to get us to pray in tongues and trying to teach us how to do it. And I just couldn't buy it. It felt wrong. It felt weird. It was scary. And there's all these kids there from ages kindergarten up to probably 17. And then they did at night was the demon thing. And like, I
What does
remember
that
us,
mean, the demon thing?
they do the deliverances at night.
Mhm.
So after you do your, food and all this sort of stuff, then you go and do your worship songs. And then they have someone go in there and tell that we are born with demons.
Mhm.
And this is the killer. They said, if you can have If you have spiritual eyes like God and Jesus, you would be able to see the demons hanging like cobwebs from the trees. And so I remember running home from my friend Mary Jo's house at night in the neighborhood, closing my eyes, envisioning myself running through webs of demons. My mom said that you don't have spiritual eyes until you're dead. And then once you die, you can see everything and, the whole thing. Then there was, they'd pray over these kids, and these kids would be wailing and spitting and throwing up. And
were the kids having specific problems? Like, how did they decide who needed deliverance?
You just would come forward. They encourage everyone to come forward. I never, ever did it.
So
and I remember.
So everybody had demons, basically.
Everyone had demons because we are born sinners, and we are just born sinners, period. We're not innately good. We have to kind of get rid of it. It's kind of like you get a report card on the first day of school. Everyone has an F, and you got to work your way to an A.
Mm-hmm.
So that was shaming. And then, so they did that. And I don't know like how the kids, if they were mimicking or if they looked at other kids, because that was just weird to have like a 6-year-old, a 9-year-old, it was just weird. And the guy had the Bible and he was banging it and he put it on people's heads. And then that was it. So I dreaded
your
the
father
night.
Was there and your mother, or just
no,
mother?
Just I'd gone by myself once or twice. I don't know when, if before or after she was a leader, but she came as a counselor one time. And I remember the parents.
So your mother became a leader in the group, is what you're saying?
She became a cabin counselor for the summer camp one year. That's what it was, like a chaperone. Mm-hmm. And I remember not wanting her to be there because it was weird, because I was older by then. She's probably just trying to make sure I didn't have a boyfriend or something. So anyways, that was always scary and weird. And then when we would go home, we were in meetings Wednesday nights, I think a lot on Saturdays at these households. So what they had is they started doing these community households where everyone lived together. So it was always a head of the household, a handmaiden, or sometimes they called her a helpmeet, and they could not be on birth control. They would have as many kids as was, God wanted you to have, is how I remember, because I used to babysit for a family. And I remember she was always pregnant, and she didn't seem too terribly much older than me. I mean, she was probably 22, and they always had kids one after another. And then they buy up these big blocks of houses. Okay. They buy real estate, and I don't know who helps, because these people don't make enough money to get a giant house on Marshall Avenue. But then the two heads of the household always have singles in there. So they might have 4 girls and 4 guys who were single. And some of them would devote their life to being single. And some of them they would set up to get married. Because I babysat for another woman who was divorced, and that was a scandal. And they set her up with a guy, and that did not last. And I remember her telling me about that. She never loved him, but they made her do it.
So just for clarification, so you are saying that they would buy a big house and then a bunch of families would move in, or a bunch of single people would move in?
Mostly it was singles, and then they would divide it up in demographics. And we were in a section called SOS, or singles, or south of Summit, SOS. And then they did this thing where they'd have St. Paul, Minnesota has an area of older fourplexes on what's called Portland Avenue. Mm-hmm. And there's fourplexes, there's 4 like garden apartments, and they're old buildings. Yep. And they would keep the main door on for security downstairs like a house. But I was the one babysitting during the meetings when I got older. Mm-hmm. And me and another girl would go and babysit like a ton of kids running around, because they would take off the doors to the individual units. Mm-hmm. So those were married couples, 4 married couples with a ton of children. I never really know who was whose, but they were able to discipline each other's children.
And tell me about discipline in this.
Okay, so I remember the discipline thing was something my parents actually sat me down with. My mother had read a book, and I can find it somewhere on the internet because I found it, and they wouldn't go by it. And so my mom started saying that they were going to discipline out of love, not anger. Because, like when you're little and they discipline you, they kind of swat your butt, whatever. But this time
You
they
don't
would say,
remember the name of the book? Because I would.
no,
like
but I can
to know.
find it. Yeah. It was something about disciplining with love. And it was a whole evangelical. He was a leader in the whole evangelical movement in the 70s.
Mhm.
I ran across it not too long ago, but I'll try to find it. Googling it. But anyways, what they have you do is they have, like, my mom would say, go up to your room. And then I would wait for your father to come home. That's always nice and shaming and scary. And then my dad would come up. Sometimes she would discipline and she'd use a wooden spoon and really spank us. But usually it was my dad, and he would come up and he would say, do you know what you did wrong? And it would be like stealing a cookie before dinner or mouthing off or rolling your eyes. I was 9. And I remember him taking his belt off, and he would strap me pretty good. And then we would have to kneel down and ask his forgiveness and ask God's forgiveness. And then I remember just recently, sadly, oh my God, talk about inner child pain. I found my diary from when I was that age. And one of my diary entries said something to the effect of, yay, I only got 8 whippings today. Because every day my mom said, like, we're going to call you on everything you do wrong, and you're going to get strapped every time until you just don't do it anymore. And so if I went a week without getting strapped, then they say, you had such a good week, And I just
What does
remember.
that mean? 8 whippings?
Yeah,
Like,
that's what it
was
said
that
with
like
his belt.
one belt thing, or is it multiple things?
Well, he would whip me like 3 times in one whipping. And then I would have to say, I'm sorry, and ask his forgiveness and God's. And then he'd hug me and then leave. So it's a complete mind fuck. And then if I went downstairs and did something else that they didn't like, or the next day, we get another one. I go to my room. We'd have to do that whole 30-minute thing again. I'd have to wait for 30 minutes, think about what I did. And it just, I remember spending an entire day when this started. And then you start learning a really nice thing. You start to learn how to lie. Yeah. Because you don't want to get caught.
So have you heard of Quiverful?
Oh, I have. Yes.
No,
what is that?
I know.
Why do I know?
I'm on the advisory board of a group called the Child Friendly Faith Project by Janet Heinlich. She wrote a book about called Breaking Their Will, about religious abuse on children, and corporal punishment is one of these things. And I met one of the advisory board people who grew up in Quiverful, and she talked about just being beaten as an infant.
Yeah, I have heard that. Like, they start early too. I think that book that I saw, they start at 6 months old, spanking.
Yeah, so
yeah,
that's
it's
probably the same. I don't remember the title of the book, but I'd like to find it. But
yeah.
So can I interrupt, because there's so much to say, but I want to make sure I cover key points. Mm-hmm. So your mom got you involved at 9, you and your brother and your father. Mm-hmm. Your mom sounded like she was more
gung-ho.
Deeply involved. I don't want to use adjectives. And your father got involved, and to the point where he was whipping you too, with his belt, is what you said, sometimes many times a day. And then at what point did your family stop being involved with this group?
And so what happened is my mom just said, we're out of the neighborhood. We're out of here. And I think it was kind of winding down where they were getting sick of it. I was 15. I was at Regina High School. It was my sophomore year, and they didn't tell us anything. I just came home, and my mom said that 2 of the realtors in the POP group, Servants of the Light at that time, because they only use their own people, that's a whole nother thing, had just gone ahead and sold the house, kind of on the hush hush. And we were moving to Burnsville, Minnesota. And we moved 2 doors down from another couple who had just gotten out of that cult. And then we moved there. But then my parents, what they do is they equally got into a weird church, which was just the same.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and then they wanted me
often, by the way.
Yeah, it's like they're used to that. It feels
Well, they
normal.
don't, if, unless people understand what is a cult and what is mind control, they often, get away from one, but then find themselves in a similar one.
Right. That's what they did. And then I remember
So what
when
group
we,
was that? Do you remember the name of
oh,
that?
the church, I just do not remember the name of the church, but it was this weird guy and his wife who played the piano. And I remember one time that they were doing an altar call, and I'm the only one that didn't go up. So he stopped the music and he yelled, "I mean, everybody." And I walked out. I was 17. So, it was that kind of a thing. And then when we moved, my dad said, "We're moving to the suburbs, but you're going to have to go to one of the Trinity schools." And that is one of the schools that POP runs. They started, and it was in, I think, West Bloomington. And so I just begged, "I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I don't want to do." They did corporal punishment there, and everyone knew it. And it was
So
like the
you were
worst.
17 at that point?
No, I was 15. I was a sophomore in high
Got it.
school. They ripped me out of Regina saying that Catholics were going to hell. All my friends were going to hell.
Got it.
They weren't saved. It was my job to save them. So that was terrifying. And then I remember going begging and begging my dad. And my dad does have a soft spot because I think he wasn't totally on board. And I remember just sobbing and crying and say, "Please let me go to the high school." And so he talked to my mom and said, "Fine, as long as you continue to go to the youth group at the New Weird Church."
Mhm.
And I did that for a while, but I think it sort of, the youth group fizzled out and there was no more opportunities for me. So they just let it go.
Mhm.
But then I got married. And then after 20 years, I got divorced. My parents were still in some form of that kind of a church. And when I got divorced, my brother shunned me. My parents, it was already rocky. They shunned me. And then it was the smear campaign. And then all of a sudden,
So were you shunned because your parents were involved with POP, or it was a different group?
No, they were out by then and they were just doing the whole
Okay, so
super.
this was abuse from a different group.
Yeah, this was the church. Oh, I don't remember his name. He had a
Are your
weird.
parents still alive?
They are alive. I haven't spoken to them in 17 years.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And my brother, just after 11 years of not speaking to me, because he got sucked into it, he reached out to me in December and said, "This is enough. Let's meet." And we met. He lives in Greensboro, North Carolina. And we met down there because I've got family down there. And we met and had a drink for about an hour and a half. And we didn't talk anything about that. We just kind of caught up. I heard from him a little bit through text, and now he's just fizzled off. So
just, I want to take some notes. And you said that you hadn't spoken for 17 years?
Since 2003. And I'm in Florida right now on vacation, and they moved to Florida, I heard. So it's always a little triggering down here, thinking.
Have you ever reached out to them?
Yes and no. So when I moved, we all lived in Minnesota. When I moved from Minnesota, me and my then husband moved to North Carolina because he got a job there. And my husband had moved ahead of me. And so I was going through the house and I boxed up a whole bunch of stuff. My parents lived right around the block.
Mhm.
And I went and brought that over to them. And they were very upset that we were moving. I had a business, a restaurant that I sold it, and they wanted half of the money. That's a whole nother story, but they were not partners. They were not on the lease. They did none of it. It was me and a girlfriend who I'm actually here with right now. And she could sure tell you a lot about my parents. So they got a lawyer and they sent me papers that they were implied partners. They want half the money. And I was out from under God's will, and I was a sinner, and I was going to hell.
Yeah,
and
I'm going to interrupt you if you don't mind, because
Yeah.
I'm really focused on people of praise because
Yeah.
of the question whether or not
It's
Judge
a cult.
Barrett might be nominated to the Supreme Court. So that's
Yeah.
really the focus of my interest.
Right.
And are you familiar with my influence continuum?
Yes. And they sent it to me too. And I was looking at it down by the pool. Yes.
And the bite model of mind
Mhm.
control, of authoritarian control.
Yes. Yes.
So,
There's
because
two
for
sides.
me, if you don't mind, if you have what was sent to you,
Mhm.
even if you can't do it on this call, if you could look through from
Yes.
page 9 to 15 is what I'm
Mhm.
really interested in.
Okay.
What was there, what wasn't there.
Mhm.
And on my website, we have analyses of a number of groups like the Mormons, like Scientology, the
Right.
Moonies, Opus Dei, Nexium, which is the leaders in jail for trafficking.
Yeah.
We have color coding for in the group, not in the group, or partially, with
Mhm.
explanation. And I'd be really interested in your experiences. And if you know any former members, I don't know if your brother might be interested in giving his input as well.
Mhm.
And if you know any other former members who can look at this and go, this is representative, some of these elements of the BITE model of
Right.
our experience, because that's really what I use to evaluate groups.
Okay.
In my
Yeah.
model, there are healthy cults, like you can be really fanatically into something, like I love scuba diving, for example, and
Mhm.
spend a lot of time and energy and money doing it, but I'm
Yeah.
free to leave. I'm free to think negative thoughts. I'm not ostracized or shunned or threatened or hit or anything
Right.
like that. This side is all about obedience to authority,
Yeah.
fear, guilt,
Yeah.
and what I refer to as kind of like a pseudo identity that they want people to have, that's in the
Right.
image of the cult leader.
Right.
So that's really the model that I'm going to be asked to speak about in terms of, is it a cult? I want to be able to say it has authoritarian,
Sure. Right.
behaviors. It's not so much that I am critical of speaking in tongues, because honestly, I don't think that they're ancient languages from all of the experts, right?
No.
And I've worked with people in cults where they were taught to speak in tongues, and it's supposed to be a gift of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah. Right.
So I'm a little less comfortable saying all people who speak in tongues are in a destructive authoritarian cult, but the
Mhm.
ones that use deceptive recruitment, the ones that shun corporal punishment, make you feel like you can't question authority figures, don't
Mhm.
let you talk to ex-members or your
Yeah.
critics, read
Mhm.
literature. Those are the things that I'm really looking for,
Mhm.
because it really is so opposite of what human rights and what freedom of religion should be all about.
Right.
Because
Right.
freedom of religion implies freedom of mind,
Yeah.
freedom to think for yourself and be who God created you to be. I don't know if you believe
Right.
in God. I
I
do.
do. I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the thing is, God didn't coerce Adam and Eve to be obedient in the
He
Garden of
didn't take the
Eden.
TVs and the radios away. Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I mean that's my stance, and it's really less about calling groups names, and am responsible for agreeing to have the Cult of Trump as the title of my book.
Mhm.
But it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck and has
Yeah.
feathers like a duck, and I felt like I had an obligation to share my perspective that leaders like Donald Trump is a malignant narcissist who has no empathy and lies and
Mhm.
controls people for his own benefit, and that he's a very dangerous person. And now so many people are dying because of lack of proper measures.
Right.
So I feel it's my obligation to speak out. And when I was called to go on the record about is it Amy Barrett,
Mhm.
potentially being nominated, I just said, I know that I've read about this group years ago, but like I need people who are willing to stand by their experiences and
Right.
and be public and
Right.
then base my opinions on people's real experiences. And
Yeah.
it's going to be controversial, I have no doubt. But again, if it quacks like a duck and has feathers like a duck, and et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
1000%.
Yeah. So would your parents say that it was a cult at this point?
I don't know because I haven't talked to him for so long. And as far as I know, well, if I look at their Facebook page, which I do once in a while, it doesn't look like much has changed.
Mm-hmm.
So, and my brother, there's no way because he's so loyal to them. He would see it as a family betrayal, whether he was in it or not. I know he's not in it, but I know he still goes to that kind of a church or believes that way. Although I know he's loosened up some just for the fact that he had a drink with me and swore.
Yeah, I would say that's
So
huge.
he's loosened up some. I think every generation probably gets a little looser. I mean, it was the 70s too.
So this is the updated edition of my book that came out in 1988, and it tells
Okay.
my story, and it tells stories of former members of a whole bunch of different destructive groups,
Okay.
including trafficking and extremist terrorist groups. And my experience is when people have backgrounds like the one you're describing and they read it, then they have a framework for saying, this was just like my experience in this
Yes.
way, this way, this way, this way. My experience wasn't this, like this, and this way, this way. But it helps to describe specific people's experiences. And
I will
so
definitely
I would say your brother, if you can ask him to consider reading it and give you his opinion of the book.
I could try. Yeah.
You know.
Yes. I really wish I knew what he really thought. We haven't had that conversation
Well,
yet.
the first meeting is always rapport and trust building and catching up.
Totally. How are your kids? Blah, blah, blah. Who's getting married?
Not having, satanic demons come out of your eyeballs.
Exactly. I'm not a Jezebel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That was my name, but yeah, I know.
Yeah, no, I really bought the whole demon thing in the Moonies, as I mentioned earlier, the Exorcist movie, and we were told these demons would invade us, constantly everywhere. And so I was trained to do thought stopping, which meant every time I had a doubt or a question, it was a demon that was causing it, not I was seeing things that were problematic, right?
Well, was it easy for you when you kind of got out of the crash and you had people trying to get you out of it? Did you fight it at all, or were you pretty much ready to go?
Oh, I was a fanatical believer, and I agreed to talk with the ex-members to prove to my parents that I wasn't in a cult and I wasn't brainwashed.
I remember reading that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was really gone. And that's partly why I'm doing this work 44 years later, because I realized if my family didn't intervene, I could have been there for 40 years. That's how deep I was. And of course, they did mass weddings and they would assign people to each other in the Moonies cult. And I know so many people who've left the Moonies now and they're divorced and
of course,
so traumatized. I was grateful that I got out after 2.5 years and I could have real life and a wife and a kid and enjoy
second chance life. Have you heard of, I'm sure you have, but have you heard of the Religious Trauma Institute?
I know Marlene Winnell forever.
Yeah, I follow them on Instagram. They got some really nice memes. They always have
I'm not an atheist.
I'm not either.
I respect people who
I don't think I could never be an atheist.
But many people have been so traumatized that they give up on all religion. They say it's all, bunk. And I think that there are good things about religion, and as well as some bad things, and that the key thing is to take the good and never give up your conscience, never give up your critical thinking, your ability to listen to other points of view and to consider them, because I love to learn.
Yeah, same. I research all the time.
Yeah,
I know.
So I'm really grateful for you taking the time. Is there anything else that you think I need to know of what you believe is, authoritarian or destructive about people of praise?
Well, I mean, the basic things is, women were the helpmeets. Everything had to be run by the husband. They were, really repressed. They would withhold information to all of us. They took out the radios, they took out the TVs for a while, but the radios for sure. I remember my dad locking my clock radio and throwing it in the trunk of his car because I was listening to a secular station.
Mm,
That took the books away. I had to read the entire Bible in one summer, and then I could get my ears pierced. I mean, things like that,
right.
and oh my gosh. And then, the fear factor of, you can lose your salvation. My mom would say things like, well, if we get raptured and you lose your salvation, you're going to be left behind. So I lived in terrible fear. I remember coming home from school one day and, she was making cookies or something and it was left on the counter. And I think she just went to the neighbors to borrow an egg. And I just thought I was screaming. I thought that she had been raptured because it was like the end time movies, with those David Wilkerson movies, Left Behind.
Yeah. So, does
Terrible.
everybody watch those in
Yes.
People of Praise?
Well, we all did. One of our meetings was to go to a theater and watch that. And I had nightmares for years about being left behind. And I still remember very vividly the helicopter scene where they're running through the woods and the family was starving and the dog was starving because they couldn't buy or sell food without the mark of the beast. And people were getting 666 and the newscasters were being raptured right on TV and their glasses were left on the counter. I mean, it was terrifying for me. And part of it maybe was my personality, part of it was my age. I don't know, but I still have dreams about like that. And, COVID feels very Armageddon-ish. It's a very big trigger. People don't think about that with this type of stuff. You see the pandemic, you see the polarization of the country, you see all this going on. And, my snake brain knows I'm right and I'm good. But, you still think, wow, what if I'm left behind? What if this is right? What if, you know what I mean? You get this social
I'm afraid
distancing.
I do. This is my work.
You do. And social distancing.
Did
just
you
feels
say
so
your
shocking.
snake brain?
My snake brain. I know, but
Why do you call it a snake brain?
like in my head, like from maybe like what you know, like, in my deepest section of knowing what's right from who I am,
Right.
I don't think my loving God is going to throw me to burn in hell because I got divorced,
Right.
I've had to balance that out. Many of my friends are born again Christians and Republicans, and I love them dearly, but I don't think you should shun your children. I don't think you're going to hell if you get
Very
your ears pierced.
traumatizing.
It is.
And
the
it's very it's intolerant. In fact, there's a lawsuit right now in Belgium, I believe, on behalf of an ex-Jehovah's Witness who is basically brought a hate case against the Watchtower because
Wow.
his family rejected him and his
Oh
friends.
yeah.
And I think, and I know that it causes trauma in people's lives tremendously to lose your contact with your mother, father, sister,
Terrible.
etc. And that's part of my work to try to right the wrongs and shine a light on this, that this is not healthy religion.
Yes.
It's not what we believe in the United States about, separation of church and state. It's not a license to abuse people. And
Yes. The smear campaigns,
And I've heard, I've worked for 44 years with so many women who were sexually abused by their husbands because they were told they had to submit. And
you can't say no.
if
That's
the
one
husband
thing.
beats them, it's because they weren't submissive enough instead of the husband has an anger problem.
Yeah.
And other things like that. It's just wrong. It's just, it's really, really wrong.
You lose yourself. You give up yourself. That's exactly right. So I see POP as definitely a cult, just because of all those things. And the oath, you got to give the big oath. You have to make a covenant.
Tell me about the oath.
Oh, so the first 6 years, the narcissist will love bomb you. And then at the 7th year, you got to crap or get off the pot, basically, because if you don't do the covenant commitment, then you get shunned, you're kicked out. That's how it was. And I remember my parents saying that somebody wanted them to be in a household or be a household, and they put all their money together. And I'm not sure how they dole it out, but I remember that these houses had their own checking accounts, and they all had names. Like when I babysat, I would get a check, and the check said Light on the Hill. That was the name of the household community. And, you know, my parents, that's one reason I think they left too, is my dad just is stubborn enough to say, no, I'm not going to do that. And I remember he said he got in a big fight at Pizza Hut with the elders of the church who wanted him to, you know, be either a head and open our house to singles, or move into one of the big houses and kind of merge those paychecks.
So they would tell people they had to move.
Yeah, you had to join or get out. You know, the first 6 years you were on your own, but after that you had to make an oath, a covenant commitment. And if you didn't do it, I mean, it was a lifetime thing. And to get out, it was terrible.
So this covenant commitment, is that like a written document?
Yeah.
Can
Yeah,
I get a copy of it?
Yeah, I saw it on Google. I Googled it last night and I actually
Can you email it to me, please?
Yeah, I will. Yeah. And it's a
And how
lifetime.
old would people have to be before they were asked to sign it?
I don't know, but I'm just assuming once you're 18 or something, because the kids were always under the headship of their dad. But if the dads are in it, you're in it. And then I remember my dad saying, you can't play with your friends anymore. And all my friends that were in the group, I couldn't contact, you couldn't call. And I was just devastated. And
why couldn't you?
Because we were shunned. We were out of the group. My parents left. We were moving. But we were also moving so far away that we wouldn't be in the group anymore. So I think there was two things going on there. I don't know that they ever knew about it, but it just broke my family down. And then they just moved. So, but I know there's a commitment you have to make, and it's not easy to leave.
That's very important. If you can find that and send that to me as soon as you can, that's a biggie. I'm really glad you told me about that.
Oh, huge covenant commitment. Yeah, it's a whole oath that you have to give. And I remember going to the ceremonies. So they would have like once a month, they would have covenant commitment ceremonies. And then afterwards, there would be like food and all that sort of stuff. And people would go up and they would give their life to it. I mean, their life to it. They were not
very
playing.
Important.
Yeah, I can't believe I forgot to say that part. That's huge.
This is why I wanted to talk.
Yeah.
And you may remember other things after I get off. Please write it down and email.
Okay. They call it a ecumenical covenant community. I think they even say that on their website. And they were always, my parents were very prejudiced. They weren't inclusive. Everyone there was white. Now
were they racist?
Well, I know my parents were. I can tell you that right now, because I tried to date a guy who was Jewish, and my dad told the guy never to call back again. I was devastated.
That's
I was in 8th grade.
Right.
Yes, that's true. I know that for a fact. But I lived in Highland Park, and if you Google Highland Park, St. Paul, almost everyone there is Jewish. Or Irish Catholic. So it was that division, but I like the dark-haired Jewish boys. I didn't like that.
I'm sorry, I'm married. No.
Sorry. Dang.
Joking.
No, but and I just really like this kid. And I remember my dad hearing him on the phone and the things he said to him. And I was just screaming like, what are you doing? There was another boy I liked too. And he owned Snyder Pharmacy. And I went out with him once, and my dad put a kibosh to that too. So I know there was all that sort of stuff. Right. But now what POP does is they move into these sort of lower income areas, and they take single mothers on food stamps and their children and buy them bikes and fix their houses. And they move into these disadvantaged. They just buy up a whole bunch of houses.
How big is the group, and who's the head of it now?
I'm not sure the name of the head, but I do know because I've seen it on the website before. And I actually wrote him an email about a year ago telling what this group did to me. And I knew I wouldn't hear back, but I said, I just need to tell you this. And I told him what I told you in a much better way.
Can you find that email?
Yes, I have it. I have it. And I also,
send it to me, please.
I do. I told the journalist about it. And I just said, you are destructive. You are wrong. You are not Christians. You are this. And because of groups like you, I don't go to church anymore. I said, I don't expect you to email me this back or email back. Of course they didn't. They're cowards. But I'm here. But I told my husband today that we were talking. He was all impressed. Oh, I know that book. And I said, you may have to find that email for me, because I had mentioned it to
Right.
to Michael. So that, and then I've also got an email from my mom that I stumbled across, or someone sent me, saying that I was mentally ill, and sending a link to everybody saying I was a sociopath, and recommending books people read so that they know that I'm mentally ill. And to this day, they hang out with my ex-husband and his new wife. The shunning is incredible.
So why did they call you a sociopath? Because you were an
Got
ex-member?
divorced. I got divorced.
You gave up the headship, in other
I
words.
gave up. Well, my husband was, we went to just a plain old evangelical, like a non-denominational church, nothing crazy. But when I left him, my mom and dad, they believe that once you're married, you're always married. So I was an adulteress, and I lost my salvation, and I did not want to be a mother anymore. And I was lost, and I had a lot of explaining to do, quote. And I also got an email from my brother saying that he can no longer talk to me. His kids can no longer stay at my house because I am out from under the spiritual covering of God. Good luck. I've got those emails.
Yeah, I've done a lot of cases with groups like this one, and it's just so horrible. What can I say? I'm so
It
sorry.
is. Yeah.
I would like to invite you. I'm going to need to wrap up in the
Sure.
next few minutes, but I would like to invite you to look at my website and look at my blogs. Look in particular at the one on corporal punishment.
Okay.
I have a video with a man named David Cooperson, who is a child protective advocate. And the book is research on why corporal punishment is so bad for children psychologically.
Okay, sure.
So you just look at he gave a talk at my forensic think tank. It's really worth reading that one. I have many blogs up about Christian like authoritarian cults. And again, it just really helps put a frame of your own experience with these other groups and go, my experience was like that, like that group, and then this way, this way, this way, this way, but it was different than, because it can help situate you also. But I think it'll also be healing for you just to have.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I haven't been to your blogs or anything for a
Freedom
while.
of Mind is the
I will.
website that I
Yes.
recommend. And I have a lot of videos with just interviews with people about their experiences, and people find it very therapeutic. Again, because part of the indoctrination with these authoritarian groups is this notion that if you leave, you're going to lose God's grace, you're going to go to hell or miss the rapture, you're going to go insane. And so when people leave, they still have all those imprinted beliefs, even though they mature and they go, that's wrong. It's still in their head until they get it out of their head. And the way to get it out of their head is to actually remember when it was put into your head and kind of like nix it at that point.
Yes.
So I'll give you an example of this technique. I think I mentioned at the beginning of this call that in the Moonies, the leadership took us all to see the Exorcist movie, and then we traveled up to Tarrytown and heard God's, the greatest man in God's history, Sun Myung Moon, the Messiah, say that if you left the church, this is what would happen to you.
Wow.
And I was out of the cult for 4 years when I started really studying psychology deeply, and I learned about phobias, and I was like, that was that movie that installed this incredible irrational fear in my head. And the technique that I recommend to my clients and to anyone I talk with, and I write about it in my books, is to kind of remember when you saw the movie, like to go back in my mind to that moment where Moon was saying to me and us, that God made the movie, and in my mind, I bring my knowledge of today back
Mhm.
to the younger
Yeah.
Steve, and then I stand up in my head. Are you nuts? A Hollywood movie? Are you
Yes.
joking?
Yeah.
Come on, everybody, let's leave. He's trying to give us a phobia to control us. And
Yeah.
and
Reframe
I
the whole thing.
leave the cult at that moment because I
Hmm.
refuse to accept the phobia
Hmm.
indoctrination. And it's very healing to do that.
Hmm. So you're changing the narrative of the story and how it unfolded. You're like reframing the whole experience. That's a really good thing.
It's really about going back in time and exiting yourself, your younger
Wow.
self, and teaching your younger you what's actually happening and why it's not healthy.
Hmm.
And in your case, I would just say your parents were mind controlled too. And so they're not bad people, but they were doing how they were programmed. I
Right.
would tell you that I've worked with people who are in Christian Science who describe it as a destructive cult group. Also, it's
Mm-hmm.
definitely a group that has withheld medical treatment from young people where they got into
Oh,
a
yes.
lot of legal trouble over that. And in
Mhm.
that group, they were like, illness isn't real. You can make it go away with,
Good
healing,
thoughts.
prayer, right?
Mm-hmm. That's my grandpa. Yeah. Yeah.
So I encourage you to look at that book by Jan Heimlich, Breaking Their Will. She's the
Yes.
founder of the Child Friendly Faith. I think you might find that healing also.
Okay. I went on a binge where I bought a whole bunch of books, and I kind of think I have that book. I can read it for a while, then I get triggered because I'm not healed, and then
Well,
you read it again.
you want to undo triggers. Triggers should become a sign of, oh, I can heal that thing in my brain from the past.
Yeah.
So it really needs to be reframed so that you're not just avoiding the stimuli,
Okay.
but where
That,
you're like taking your wise mind, who you are today, and going back in your mind to those moments and going,
no. Yeah.
cancel.
Yeah.
That's,
Not happening. Yeah.
it's
We
not God's
feel more
way
power.
to
Mhm.
traumatize little kids.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna do it. I will
Good.
visit your stuff. It's raining now, so I'm gonna sit. I'm in the hotel room now, and I'll go through everything. And I
Great.
appreciate your taking the time. I know you're really busy, and
I am.
know.
I'm trying to finish my dissertation, which is due next Thursday, and I was writing this afternoon. But this is a big deal. If she's
Yeah.
going to be nominated to the Supreme Court, I
Yeah.
want to add my voice to,
Same.
warning, warning.
I know. I know. Same.
This is not who we want on a bench,
Yes.
the highest court of America at all.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I was talking to Michael about that. I've had a couple of talks with him, and I keep leaving. I'm on a girls' trip and interviewing, and it's just an important thing. I just said any way I can help. Absolutely.
Great. Well, for me,
Okay.
finding that document of the covenant commitment
Yep.
would be huge.
Yep.
So
And then doing your checklist and everything and getting
yes,
it back.
exactly.
I'll do that.
And you can download it off of the website, literally sleep deprivation, dietary stuff.
Oh yeah.
You
They
put
sent
it
me
there.
that. Michael sent me all that stuff.
Great.
I've got everything. Now, do I have your email just through your website? Is that what I'm using?
It should be my last
Oh,
name, HASSAN at freedomofmind.com.
yeah, I guess I have it on the Zoom
The
thing.
one
Okay.
that's on the website is Center at Freedom of Mind. That goes to my assistant as well as me.
Okay.
So you get
Got
two for one email, but my direct email is Hassan, and that's fine.
Okay. Okay. I'll send you anything I think of,
Pleasure.
anything extra. Thank you. Have good luck with your dissertation.
Yeah, and if you know other former members,
I reached out to some yesterday and they wouldn't talk,
okay. Well,
but I'll keep thinking.
you're welcome to share whatever I've sent, with the bite model and the influence continuum.
Yes.
Ask them, just check it out. And if you change
Yes.
it, let me know.
Sounds perfect. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye-bye.